Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right show. We are live, we are local in beautiful downtown Las Vegas. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. So, obviously, a lot of things popping off over the weekend. Absolute frightening event occurring for the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. An arson attack yesterday at 2 in the morning. Now, Shapiro, it should be noted, is a man on the rise in the Democratic Party. His name has frequently been brought up as presidential material. He certainly may have presidential aspirations and is on a short list discussed by the media in the lead up to 2028. So an attack on him and his family inside their official residence in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, certainly raising eyebrows. Timed also with the start of Passover. Shapiro is himself Jewish and was considered at one point, rumored to have been, on Kamala Harris's vice presidential shortlist, and stricken from that list precisely because of his religion and the ongoing war in Israel and Gaza. So, what do I make of this? Everybody's texting me yesterday. Sam, what do you think? See, look at this. My liberal friends, see, look at this. There's political violence against Dems too. It's almost as if they were relieved that a Democrat got attacked. It's not just Republicans. And Elon Musk affiliated people and entities getting hit with obviously unacceptable political violence. So let me tell you, first off, I still right now, as of 1 o'clock on April 14th, have no idea what this guy's motives were. Apparently he was upset about some sort of court order against him and decided to take it out on the governor. So the perp here, if you've seen his picture, he looks like someone you would find rummaging through a dumpster, okay? His mom said he was off his medication for, being bipolar. I don't know. Some political violence is not the same as others. And what do I mean by this? There's a huge difference in my book between somebody like this who is mad at the government did something to him, whether it's legitimate or not, and taking it out on the governor, and an organized, political pressure campaign, aka terrorism, against an entity like Tesla. The violence against Tesla, by and large, is organized. And we've covered this here, right? The rallies, they all show up and are given talking points. There are people hired to attend them, designed to, whip up emotion and, certainly motivate individuals to take matters into their own hands. The folks that are going around keying Teslas and even throwing Molotov cocktails at Teslas don't seem to me at first blush to be simply people off of their meds. The guy that was arrested and charged here in Las Vegas, Nevada, for firebombing a Tesla dealership, destroying a number of vehicles. People that know him, yeah, he's an odd duck, but he's not somebody that is, clinically diagnosed crazy. He is simply somebody who sits in front of his television and day in and day out consumes media that tells him that Trump is a fascist, that Trump is a Nazi, that Trump is a dictator, that Trump is all these terrible things, and that his enablers, his oligarch overlords, aka Elon Musk, must be destroyed and taken down, else we lose the United States as we know it. I don't know. I see a clear difference. So, I mean, this is it. And look at I mean, there was news over the weekend as well that Florida is seeking state charges now against the second would-be Trump assassin, Ryan Ruth. And, you know, of course, I think this is a good deal, and it ought to happen because this guy is dangerous. He's very dangerous, proven to be dangerous. And you know, obviously, I'm glad that Florida is taking steps to do their own investigation, because when they began all of this, the FBI, the DOJ under Biden, was obviously slow playing the deal. So it'll be interesting, right? From a legal perspective, perhaps slightly different evidence will come out in the state case and will come out in the federal case. Obviously, now the Department of Justice taken over by forces sympathetic to Trump. So I would anticipate a more vigorous investigation and prosecutorial follow through. So all of this said, though, the guy there, to me, although he's also crazy, was motivated by sheer political hatred of Donald Trump. And it's fascinating for me to watch the media fall over themselves trying to ignore one story and pump up the other. For me, the real takeaway from yesterday's events in Pennsylvania and this horrific attack, and by the way, when I first read it, I thought, you know, the way the story read is the guy basically threw in some sort of an incendiary device that slightly burned a part of the house. But by the time I kind of fully woke up from things and got around to looking at the news in depth and looking at photographs, it's horrific. I mean, this guy, I still don't understand how he scaled a 7-foot security fence around the perimeter of the executive mansion. He comes, runs across a large, you know, lengthy, you know, lawn area, garden area, breaks into the house and begins, you know, throwing whatever it was of, you know, basically lighting the place on fire. The damage is extensive. And I think the governor and his family and the friends staying with them in the residence are lucky to be alive. So my point is not to minimize what occurred at all. But it's just fascinating to me to watch the media, the mainstream media, talk incessantly about this attack on Shapiro. And then, you know, they forgot about Ryan Ruth, who was hiding in the bushes with a gun, popping off bullets at Trump while he was golfing, and a candidate, leading candidate for the presidency, now president, ignore that completely and not want to ascribe any political motivations to an act that was completely politically motivated. And the reason is, and this is the sad truth, the takeaway truth, is that the media would have loved if Ryan Ruth had succeeded. Because it's the media whipping these crazies up into all of this. You don't hear me. I mean, folks, you know, I was here behind this microphone for the agonizing 4 years that was the Joe Biden presidency. And how many times I didn't even wish death on him, for Pete's sake. I would sit here and I would say, please, we don't want him to drop dead. He said we're going to get Kamala. I was so pro Biden living. I mean, the idea, right, that I would sit here and whip people up into doing something crazy is insane. And yet CNN does it day in and day out. 15 minutes of MSNBC would have you convinced, if you dropped in from another planet, from another, you know, solar system, you would come in here and watch 15 minutes of MSNBC and determine that Trump is the most odious character to ever afflict our great country. So that's, I think, the real story here, right? They pick and choose the things that they want to talk about to fit their narrative. Yeah, and then there's the Wisconsin team. I got to take a break. The kid in Wisconsin kills his parents so he can kill Trump. That's another wild one. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, the What's Right Show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Yes, friends, greetings and welcome to the program. Sam@whatsrightshow.com is my email, sam@whatsrightshow.com. And of course, on X, formerly known as Twitter, you can find me at What's Right Sam. Okie dokie. So political violence, obviously, over the weekend. The governor of Pennsylvania, Shapiro, as his name, was attacked inside of his home. A guy crawls in, basically climbs over a 7-foot wall, breaks a window, gets inside the house. I mean, where the hell are the police, right? Or does he have troopers or somebody, state police, guarding him? Insane to me. Regardless, the guy is able to breach the perimeter like this, and he's just a crackhead. Right? You look at this picture, the guy's a crackhead, and his social media, he seems to be a lib. He's just mad at the Pennsylvania government. I've heard conflicting things, but I think there was some sort of court decision that took a piece of property for him, something along those lines, and he wanted to take it out on the gov. Side note, who would ever want to be in politics? He says one person gets a grievance against you over something you really had nothing to do with, and next thing you know, they're in your living room setting a campfire. I'm just saying. It's crazy stuff. So the media's been running with it. Here's a story that they ought to be talking about a hell of a lot more, and that is this kid in Wisconsin, this absolute monster who was arrested living in a Milwaukee suburb. He murdered both of his parents, his mother and stepdad, in order to basically have the financial means and the personal freedom to attack and kill Donald Trump. His name is Nikita Kasap, 17 years old. His mother, Tatiana Kasap. Stepdad, Donald Maher. Both mother and stepdad murdered. And when the feds went through the guy's kid's communications, his devices, his electronics, found out that he had a plan to kill the president. Robbie, I'm gonna. Can I still don't put this, Robbie, at the same level with the Tesla stuff. It's a heinous crime. There's another story that intersects with this that just came out yesterday, funny enough, in New York Times Magazine. And that's a piece about ADHD and how basically 23% of all, 17-year-olds? Yeah, 23% of all 17-year-olds are on, some form of ADHD medication. 1 in 4. We're ignoring our kids. We're over-medicating our kids. We're driving them crazy. All of this stuff, right? But this kid also, maybe cracked out of his mind, but he was watching the news and he decided that Trump was the Orange Hitler, so he had to be taken out. And he was willing to kill his own parents to achieve it. For every one story about this kid in Wisconsin, a Milwaukee suburb, every story, there's 100 about the arson at the governor's mansion. Just pointing it out. They are avoiding any conversations about Trump-targeted violence. Now, why do I keep harping about, and I have been for weeks and weeks now, these Tesla protests? My problem principally with them is this. I think they're highly organized. I think they're highly targeted. I think that there are, the hands-off government, movement is big. Tesla Takedown is another group. There's the Disruption Project, Democratic Socialists of America. There's a guy, Reid Hoffman, prominent Democratic donor, and George Soros, both funding these operations. And if you look at the playbook that the Democrats have written over the past 30 years, and you go through it, you understand this is exactly, move by move, exactly what they're doing. What they've always, they go for the weakest point, the most vulnerable point, and they're fighting tooth and nail right now. It's so specifically targeted, right? Because it's Doge. It's going in and goring the ox for so many politicos in D.C. and around the country. All of this funny money just flowing right out of our, Federal Reserve printing machines, money getting printed just to be able to throw 10 million here, 20 million there to the spouses and other close relatives of people in our government. Biggest scam on the planet. So they're fighting against it, and they've organized. It's flat out terrorism. And it's intended to disrupt our democracy in the purest sense of that concept, which is people go to vote, voted for change, voted literally. Elon Musk was there campaigning with Trump, jumping up and down on stage. It was clear we were getting Trump, we were getting Musk, we were getting Doge. We're going to downsize, right size, whatever term you want to use, government. People went to the polls and they voted for it. They checked the box. Trump won, got a decisive mandate, in my view. And the Democrats, boo-hoo, didn't like what they got, sat there for a hot minute, fingers crossed, sphincters, clenched. Everybody was just sitting there going, maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe Elon Musk is going to get distracted with SpaceX and Twitter and whatever, and Tesla, and he's going to just not do this. And lo and behold, Elon moves into the White House and begins cutting. And everybody lost their minds. And then came a deliberate, targeted effort to stop him. So there's that. By the way, the Tesla numbers have been dramatically revised. And I know I've seen a few different sources of this, so I'm not going to run with it full board yet, but I've seen that they're downsizing the numbers, that there's been a redo on this. So they're, they went from 2 trillion now saying it's going to be in the hundreds of billions that they're going to be able to cut this year. And I don't know if that's necessarily because of, Doge, Robbie. Yes, I didn't mean DE. I meant Doge. Thank you so much. Robbie's correcting me here, albeit a couple minutes late. But anyway, yes, folks, you know what I mean. But my point is here that it was the threat of Doge, the realization that it was real, going through all of these, accounts and all the ridiculous spending that then activated the biggest political operation in our country's history. And it's all meant to look organic, but it has created and it has supported actual violence. And that's what needs to be said. So look, I mean, I'm just pointing this out, just letting you know. Okay. All right. Well, listen, I the part of the story too is the Bill Maher, show that came out where on Friday when he talked about his time meeting with Trump. I have so many thoughts on this, and it's not in line with most conservative commentators out there. And I put a tweet over the weekend on my account on @What'sRightSam with my disapproval, actually, of most conservatives and their reaction to this. So I'm going to explain what that is when we return. Yeah, Bill Maher, met Trump and had dinner with him and said that he was great. So many reactions from the right and from the left. Both of them I take issue with. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. What's Right show will be back in just a moment. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. Happy Monday. We made it. We got through the weekend. What did I do? Well, I had Friday night had a party. Do this every year this time in April as our Christmas and April party for Sam and Ash injury law. So for our employees, the reason we do it in April is because it started during COVID. The COVID year, 2020, things were reopening right at the end of the year. 2020, let's see, it would have been 2020. Things began to reopen right in June, July, but we still had all these restrictions in place. And it's I know it's pretty stupid. 4 people to a table, if you remember this. Those of you who lived in Vegas, right, at the time, 4 people to a table, and they told us the venue where we wanted to have our party, they said, you can do it, but the 4 people at the table can't get up and mingle with other tables, so you can't switch people. We're like, well, that's not a Christmas party, right? That's like detention with food. So we said no to that and postponed. So we'll have the party when we come out of this. So we ended up having it in April. And everybody loved it because it was warmer, it was nicer, it wasn't as stressful, there weren't as many problems and all this stuff, right? So ever since then, Christmas in April, and we did it this year at the Golden Steer restaurant. And the Golden Steer is just a phenomenal place, the oldest steakhouse in the city of Las Vegas, and just a spectacular place. So thank you, and a huge shout out to Nick and Amanda over there at the Golden Steer for having us, for hosting us, and showing us an incredible time. Had an absolute blast. And Robbie was there with his cowboy hat. Love that. Okay. No. Bill Maher did not wear a cowboy hat or anything. He wore a suit and tie to his meeting with Trump the other week. And you know who Bill Maher is. He's HBO show. He's a big lib, and he is consistently wrong about things, except when he isn't. Now, what do I mean by that? It's kind of an obvious statement, right? Bill Maher is one of these liberals that is consistently wrong about stuff and then occasionally gets it right. And even I will play it here on the show as an example. Look, even somebody as wrong as Bill Maher, I'm not going to call him dumb. I'm going to say somebody as wrong as Bill Maher sees the issue here for what it is. I'll give you an example. Men competing in women's sports, right? I have used over the years Bill Maher occasionally as an indicator of when Democrats really go too far. And that's it, right? I don't celebrate it. I don't get excited about it. I don't think to myself, boy, Bill Maher is going to turn into the next Republican. My goodness, let's welcome him with open arms into the MAGA movement. And it's almost as if that is what some conservatives said after he came back from his meeting with Trump. So maybe just play the clip. Those of you who have not heard it, this was Friday night on his real-time show on HBO. Bill Maher talking about what went down in his meeting with Trump. And anyway, this is it.
Look, I get it. It doesn't matter who he is at a private dinner with a comedian. It matters who he is on the world stage. I'm just taking as a positive that this person exists, because everything I've ever not liked about him was, I swear to God, absent, at least on this night with this guy. Bob, Kid Rock, told me the night before, he said, if you want to get a word in edgewise, you're going to have to cut him off. He'll just go on. Not at all. I've had so many conversations with prominent people who are much less connected, people who don't look you in the eye, People who don't really listen because they just want to get to their next thing. People whose response to things you say just doesn't track, like, what? None of that with him. And he mostly steered the conversation to, what do you think about this? I know, your mind is blown, so's mine. There were so many moments when I hit him with a joke or contradicted something, and no problem. At dinner, he was asking me about the nuclear situation in Iran in a very genuine, hey, I think you're a smart guy, I want your opinion sort of way. And I said, well, obviously you're privy to things about it, I'm not, but for what it's worth, I thought the Obama deal was worth letting play out because we made Iran destroy 98% of the uranium, and they were 15 years away from a bomb. And then I said to him, but we got rid of that. You got rid of that. He didn't get mad or call me a left-wing lunatic. He took it in. I never felt I had to walk on eggshells around him. And honestly, I voted for Clinton and Obama, but I would never feel comfortable talking to them the way I was able to talk with Donald Trump. That's just how it went down. Make of it what you will. Me, I feel it's emblematic of why the Democrats are so unpopular these days.
Now, I'll tell you, this comes out, and on Saturday, all Saturday, I am doing a little, reviewing of social media and watching the news, a little bit of Fox, and every Republican commentator is fawning over this. Oh, see, look at this. This is great. See, this Bill Maher sees what Trump is all about. Why is it praiseworthy that a TDS inflicted, suffering, long-suffering, lib commentator meets with Trump and actually all of a sudden goes, oh, what people say about him isn't true? I've never had dinner with Trump. I never have. And yet, for the last 9 years, better part of a decade, I have been able to sit here behind the microphone and talk to you all about who Trump is because I have A, powers of observation, B, I know enough people who know him well who have informed me of things, and I trust that. And that is something every person in the media could be capable of doing, but they are so invested in the narrative that they won't do it. They refuse to do it. They refuse to hear it. And I'm not going to sit here as a conservative who has been right about Trump for many years now, and applaud when a liberal goes, oh, wow, whoa, I was so wrong. Okay, good, you were wrong. Clap, clap. Good for you, gold star. But Bill Maher is smart enough. Okay, listen to me. Smart enough and connected enough. If he's friends with somebody like Kid Rock, he has friendships with people that could give him some insight if he could just get past himself for a hot second. He could have arrived at this conclusion well before he had any sit down with Trump. He chose not to. So Bill Maher wants to sit here and say this is emblematic of the problems of the Democratic Party. He's emblematic of the problem of the Democrat. You're the problem, Bill. It took him, actually being at the White House going, oh, the caricature that we, the media, we, the liberal left-wing mainstream media, created is not exactly accurate. Oh, my gosh. I think I piled on Laura Ingraham over the weekend. It's not fair. Laura Ingraham said that this was praiseworthy or whatever. Praiseworthy. Nothing's fair. Now, the second part of this is, of course, are the liberal reactions to this. Because while Bill Maher may be lucky enough that most political commentators aren't me, that I'm just a colossal pain in the toucan, right? And everybody else around is blowing smoke up his rear end. The liberal media establishment is all having conniption fits, to say the least. And one particular moment came Friday on the Real Time show after this monologue. And Rogan was there with, let's see, Josh Rogan, who is a Washington Post guy and a CNN guy, and he was absolutely unhappy with the way that that Maher treated the Trump topic. And by the way, Piers Morgan was there as well, and had to actually, at the end, you'll hear Piers chiming in, the charming British accent of none other than Piers Morgan, coming to Bill Maher's defense.
I just wanted to report exactly what I saw. I did it to the best of my abilities.
Counterpoint?
Honest as I can be. Yes.
Counterpoint?
Yeah.
Counterpoint,
Bill,
counterpoint.
I think you're right in saying that people have made too much of this, okay? It's not the Ulta Summit. You're not Churchill. Kid Rock is not Stalin. Trump sure as shit than FDR, okay? So, yes, I believe too much has been made about this, but I think you've fallen into the trap. I think that I represent 99% of the internet when I say this, is that you've played the game of proximity is principle. And what people are worried about is not your motivation. We believe you. We love you, Bill. Everybody loves Bill, right? So I'm not questioning your motivation. I'm questioning Trump's, okay? And if we can say that you went there in good faith, but maybe, just maybe, he wasn't there in good faith. I mean, you sold him on the Iran deal and he took it in. I mean, give me a break, okay? So the idea here is that your motivation is sound, but what's the impact? And I think a lot of people out there, fans of yours, people who love you, people who are fans of you, like me, I've been fans of you.
You don't have to patronize me, dude.
Okay.
I don't know you. I never met you.
I'm just saying that this comes from
not
a place
everybody
of
has
love.
to like it.
All I'm
That's
saying
what we said. There are people who didn't want it to happen at all. You sound like one of them. It's
No,
okay.
no.
But did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
Like, what is the alternative to not talking? Just sit at your lunch table and don't talk to anybody?
I talked to him. I've interviewed Trump. Here's an interview.
That's not it. That's just not an interview. This was not an interview.
I agree with the principle of engagement. I'm just saying, from his perspective, you have to understand that people out there know, all Americans know, that for him this was a PR stunt, and in his view, you were a prop in that PR stunt. Okay.
Well, you see, I don't agree with that.
Yeah. The fact that you began your little rant with the internet, that tells me everything. You take your cues from the internet. Good luck.
No.
I mean, Maher's right. Piers Morgan obviously knows Trump very well, and that therefore, even though Piers is, I think, in my view, kind of a lefty guy, left-leaning guy, is periodically flattering of Trump and positive about Trump, even when they profoundly disagree, comes from his personal acquaintance and awareness of who Trump is as a person. But this snivelly little mainstream media man, this mental midget, okay, is sitting there going, but Trump's motivations, but Trump is there to pull the wool out of your eyes. Ugh. Imagine coming on somebody's show and telling him flat out, maybe you're just too stupid to realize that Trump was using you. So bad. So bad. But that's the state of the media. So the same media that are out there, what happened to Josh Shapiro? This is probably some right-wing fanatic. Whoops, well, never mind, just a guy off his meds. And turns out he's not a Trump fan, but they'll still run with that story, ignoring stories of deliberate, targeted violence against Trump, ignoring the organization behind the Tesla riots, terrorism, and then taking it to this, still, in spite of having one of their own coming out and saying, hey, turns out I had dinner with Trump, a pretty nice guy and inquisitive and curious and all this stuff. Just, I'll tell you, that's the media for you in sum and total, okay? They create the narrative first, and then they select whatever facts and even some fiction to plug into the pre-made, formula for whatever news, quote unquote, they're going to get out. And I think that's embarrassing. I think that's shameful. And I think actually that contributes to a great deal of vitriol and political violence in the country, to be absolutely frank about it. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. Be right back in a moment. Greetings and friends. Welcome to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Trump, by the way, for his part, is very healthy in spite of the stress of the job. A 5-hour medical examination took place on Friday at Walter Reed Hospital in Maryland. Trump received blood tests, cardiac examination, ultrasounds, and his doctor proclaimed him to be in quote-unquote excellent health. In fact, from the report, it says President Trump exhibits excellent cognitive and physical health and is fully fit to execute the duties of commander-in-chief and head of state. Now, I will give you one tiny little comment, little asterisks on this. And I said the same thing when Biden got his good results from his doctors. I think that this whole idea of the president being examined by a doctor and having the doctor, release the results is stupid. I think it's completely idiotic. Number one, I would assume that if they found something, if they, let's say, for example, found cancer in Trump, that they wouldn't announce it publicly. It would turn the world into upside down. Our enemies would exploit it. I mean, this is, very, very, state secret level stuff, right? Highly sensitive information. So to that extent, I think that these reports are just performance and nothing else. Performance art. Yep, he's perfectly great. And how do I know they're performance art? Well, because the doctor lied about Biden. Oh, yeah, no, he's absolutely great. Passed all his cognitive tests. Meanwhile, Biden is sitting there at the Maui fire victims gathering with a lei around his neck, staring agape out into, I don't know, the fifth dimension. Little bit of drool forming at the corner of his mouth. It's just awful to watch. So yeah, that's my take on this generally, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. They could just do away with this whole thing, in my honest opinion. Just get rid of it. Okay. So, well, by the way, I think that if Bill Maher, I'm coming back to this for a moment, went and had, dinner with the president, Kid Rock, this mutual friend, organized the meeting. And if the meeting hadn't gone well, or if Maher had perceived that Trump was not good in any way particular, I mean, he would come out and say it. Because it would affirm what his expectations were, what his beliefs were leading up to it. The fact that he was so positive tells me that it was a complete shock to us, and it was all good for the most part. I mean, it was really, could not have, in other words, gone any better. And again, it's not praiseworthy that some lib like Maher finally saw the light, right? Woo, I saw the light. Trump is amazing, right? At the same time, I've been observing how intolerant the left is of Maher's awakening, and I find that to be the bigger part of the story, right? Because Maher has had people all over have been saying, well, screw him, I'm never watching his show again. And we never should just watch something or consume something simply because it affirms our beliefs. Some of the people out there, now look, Rachel Maddow is not going to contribute anything to me other than material for the show, right? But there are people that I have significant disagreements with on in very specific areas. And sometimes I have to admit to myself that something that I had an opinion on changes when I hear persuasive arguments being made. We should look at things objectively. In other words, it's the difference between us as conservatives, we are fact-based, not feeling-based, and them as liberals who base everything entirely on their emotion. That's the difference. And so I do think the left has really shut themselves up in a world where they just watch left-wing commentary of Trump. If there are any, clips of Trump, they've been taken out of context, like the Fine People hoax, for example. And then, they don't ever listen. They have never watched an entire Trump rally. They've never seen an entire Trump speech. And then you've got the journalists like Josh Rogan, who's fighting back on Bill Maher and getting mad at him. And basically, look, I mean, he's just mad that Maher went off script, and you're not supposed to do that if you're a lib. All right, I'll be right back, folks. Top of the hour. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., right here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Now, I have a giveaway. I don't do these very often, but we're doing it now here for Sam and Ash Injury Law for this Saturday's Henderson Silver Knights game at Lee's Family Forum. Sam and Ash, of course, this is a sponsor of the Henderson Silver Knights. And we've got 4 on-the-ice tickets. They're great tickets. And so it's very simple. You go to samandashlaw.com/giveaways. And you go in there, you plug in your name, phone number, and email, and that's it. You go in and you can apply, and we'll pick a winner for at random for this Saturday's game. So the game is at 6 p.m. On the 19th, this Saturday, in Henderson, Nevada. If you're out of town, you should come to Vegas, obviously, and see the Silver Knights play. I personally love the arena there. It's far more intimate hockey, and they're younger players, right? Because it's the AHL team, and they're all trying to get up into the majors, get into the NHL. So they play like warriors. I mean, they really there's fights. There's a lot of visceral play. Great hockey. So if this is something up your alley, please go on there. And by the way, we'll announce a winner on Friday the 18th. Excellent. There we go. Now, I want to get to this absolutely fantastic meeting in the Oval Office. Sometimes I think we don't even deserve Trump. He's just so good. And this is the Trump that I voted for in 2016. And I feel like by happenstance and, of course, political subterfuge and Trump's own kind of naivete when it came to Washington, that we didn't get this Trump in his first term. We didn't get the Trump that we wanted until now. But now we have him. And one of the reasons, and I'll say this over and over again, one of the reasons that Trump is so successful right now is that he has, thankfully, thanks to all the lawfare waged against him in, post-presidency, 2021, 22, 23, and so on, Trump, I think, has been able to, by virtue of all of that incoming fire from the Democratic Party establishment, from the DOJ, from Fani Willis, from Tish James in New York, and others, he was able to really figure out who his friends are. You don't know who really is going to support you until you've got 4 or 5 different indictments going against you and your friends are getting arrested and charged alongside of you, when you go, okay, this guy's in my foxhole with me right now. I think maybe I can trust him. What we have going right now, folks, the people that surround Trump have proven their loyalty through the darkest days of his life. there were many Republicans that were fair weathered when Trump was hit with that first indictment. I need to set this up properly. So I'll go back to that day. And of course, the first indictment was the documents case stemming from the, I believe, highly illegal raid on Mar-a-Lago. And I remember where my mind was at the day before, because I had my issues with Trump. I was disappointed with how Trump's first term came down, and I believed he could have done a better job in spite of everything that he had going against him. That's just my thought. And then I also just thought that the whole thing got sloppy at the end. And COVID certainly, I realized, wasn't helping, but it got sloppy. And I thought, look, we got to have an open primary. I kind of like DeSantis. He's proven that he's got the ability to lead. So I had, a little flirtations with DeSantis. Those of you who've been listening to the show for a while, I don't ever want to gloss over any of this, because it is part of my history with this and where I stand. And so at the time, my big thing was, I think I kind of like DeSantis, and I was all for having an open primary, which I still stand by. But I know what happened the day that Trump was first raided at Mar-a-Lago, and then particularly the indictment. And I tell you, I was absolutely radicalized that day. To me, that crossed a line, right? And it crossed the line with a lot of people out there for me. I still have conservatives now who claim to support Trump. And I remember that they thought he should get out of the race because he was indicted. So there was popular thought at the time that Trump ought to get out of the race, that he ought to step out of the race, because by virtue of being the subject of a criminal investigation launched by who? His political opponent. Absolute madness. So Trump now is surrounded not by people like in his first term that were around for the good times of a Republican presidency. Don't really care for Trump, whatever. People that would do what they thought would be best for them, not what they would be best for the Trump presidency and the Trump administration as a whole. Now he's got people who absolutely are ride or die, okay? Members of the administration. That's the setup. And the refining fire in this was January 6th and the aftermath that was the lawfare launched against Trump. So that's the setup. Now, why am I so enthused about Trump today? So he hosted the president of El Salvador. Now this is such a wild meeting. So the president, Bukele, comes from El Salvador, visits with Trump. He was invited by Trump to meet with him right as the fight over these various illegal immigrants, gang members that were being shipped to the El Salvadorian prison. So this was the El Salvadorian prison. This is the guy that controls the prison. This is the guy that built the prison. And if you'll remember, there's a particular case of a gentleman who was twice by the court determined to be part of a violent gang, and the Supreme Court now has ordered his return to the U.S. And Trump was like, I'm not going to do anything about it. And this was all heating up right as Trump invited him to the White House. I think almost perfect timing, just as the Supreme Court says, you got to return this guy. You got to bring him back. Trump thumbs his nose at John Roberts, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. In fact, at the whole court, and holds a open press conference with the guy that is holding this particular gentleman. And it just keeps getting better, all of this. So here is the moment in which the president of El Salvador is asked by a Caitlin Collins from CNN, Ms. Collins, who has become the Acosta, I think, of Trump's second term. Caitlin Collins asking President Bukele to weigh in on this about the subject of sending back this deportee to the jurisdiction of the United States. This answer, now mind you, he's got a little bit of an accent. You got to pay attention. I'll tell you what he says later. I'll make sure that it's very clear. But here's what was said.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to be suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our
country. There's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people.
This is beautiful. Bukele turns it around on Caitlin Collins. He says, well, what do you want me to smuggle a terrorist back into the United States of America? And by the way, we'll talk about this after the break. What are even the grounds for this? This is what makes the Supreme Court decision so absurd, right? This guy is a citizen. He is an illegal immigrant in the U.S., undisputed fact, who is being returned to his country of origin. Where the hell does the Supreme Court think that they have the authority over this guy? And the answer is the Supreme Court is very much aligned with CNN in their joint project to bring as many dangerous thugs into this country, irrespective of what the law says. So this meeting earlier, I got another. Well, Stephen Miller laid this out. I got to take a break. I'm going to get to it all. I promise. Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT. Be back in a moment.
The Salmon Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Earlier today, El Salvador President Nayib Bukele said that he had no ability to send back an alleged MS-13 gang member deported from Maryland from his prison. He said, quote, "I hope you're not suggesting that I smuggled terrorists into the United States." Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. What happened today at the Oval was nothing short of a complete and total smackdown of CNN and their star reporter, Caitlin Collins. The smackdown continued with Stephen Miller, who is a senior Trump aide. Speaking of staff members who have been with Trump and proven their loyalty to him through the entire odyssey of the 4-year interregnum period in between Trump's first and second terms, when the deep state, Biden et al. Went after Trump with everything they had and lost. This is Stephen Miller's. Like Caitlin Collins goes, what about the deportees? Aren't you under court order to bring them back? You got to bring them back. What do you say about that, Mr. President? And Trump starts the answer, and then very quickly, Stephen Miller takes it over. This was absolutely beautiful to watch.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Could you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So we had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So there it is. And I'll tell you, that was it. That was the kind of the closing statement. And then, of course, Bukele joined the conversation, who is... and the better part then got when they were talking about the border too. I mean, all of this was so good. Yeah, Bukele starts talking about Trump's numbers at the border, and you know what's incredible. Obviously, Bukele himself has deserves credit for what he has done in El Salvador, that went from being the murder capital of the world to one of the safest countries, or the safest country actually in the Western Hemisphere. Absolutely crazy turnaround. And he did it through the enforcement of law and order, similar to what Trump has done on the border. So Bukele says to Trump, yeah, hey, you know, very well done on the border. This is how that went down.
Actually, what you're doing with the border is remarkable. It has dropped, what, 95%? It's incredible.
Okay. As of this morning, 99%, 99.1% to be exact.
Why are those numbers not in the media?
Well, they get out with the fake news, you know, like CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They only like putting out because I think they hate our country, actually.
Yeah,
but it's a shame. You're right. Isn't that a great question? Why doesn't the media? Why don't they put out numbers?
Yeah, 99%. I mean, it's crazy, right?
It is crazy, and it's great news. And this is what we voted for in 2016. It's what we voted for in 2020. And it's certainly what we voted for in 2024 when it became apparent to us that the Democrat alternative that was sold to many under the false promise of being a stabilizing force in our country, adults in charge, Joe Biden, the paternalistic political grandfather of the country, coming in to right the ship in the wake of the chaotic years of Trump from 2017 to 2021. It was all nonsense. It was all horse crap. A globalist took over and decided to, on the backs of our wives, our children, our loved ones, our family members, friends, neighbors, to destroy this country in order to seize control politically of the United States of America. We were sacrificed for all of this. And that's why I'm not particularly hung up on, oh, well, did they cross every T and dot every I with deporting these monsters from our country? It's pretty simple. Anywhere I go around the world, if I overstay my visitor visa, if I'm there longer than the allotted 90 days or in some cases 30 days, and I am arrested, I am summarily, sent out, arrested, held in a jail cell. Never had this happen to me because I followed the law, but held in a jail cell and deported. Out I go. But for some reason, if you're a Democrat, they just want to work here, Sam. They just want to work. And, I bought that argument for a period of time, but Biden took it so far to such an extreme that now I'm out. I'm gone. I have no sympathy. And my legal immigrant parents are even less sympathetic to this than I am. By the way, just so you know, because the people that got here legally, that did it the hard way, that did in fact worry about, following every single, rule, they're incensed by this even more than you might imagine for those of us who were fortunate enough to be born in this country and have citizenship by virtue of our parents or birth. So this just is wild to think about. This is the number one issue. And the fact that CNN and the libs continue to harp on it, nobody in America right now, no one, okay, maybe 20% of the same people that think Bigfoot is real, same number, okay, are out there crying about this guy, this MS-13 guy. They admitted it was a whoopsie daisy. Fake news. They sent him back, and no one's crying about it. Okay. By the way, immigration gone wild in other places. Cautionary tale from Great Britain. I got to share this with you when we come back. Don't go anywhere. The What's Right Show will return after these messages. All right, folks, welcome back to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense, for conservatism, for entertainment, and, of course, for information, which we try to impart here on a daily basis, Monday through Friday at least. Monday through Friday, yes, 1 to 3 p.m. And today, just a quick note, we're going to doing this week a What's Right Show ticket giveaway. 4 on ice tickets to this Saturday's Henderson Silver Knights game at Lee's Family Forum. Game time is 6 p.m. So go enter between now and through the 17th at samandashlaw.com/giveaways. And there's right at the top one there. Click on it. The Henderson tickets. Go on there and put all your information in, and we'll pick somebody on Friday. Okay. So, well, I have to just quickly share this. It's just a clip that is going around the world. I keep telling you how absolutely insane things are in some places of the world. In Germany, I don't think it's as striking in Germany because, these clips are not going viral in the U.S. because it's not in English, and we Americans like to have things in English. But in Great Britain, in England, where democracy of sorts was constructed, at least created in a way that then was taken by our founding fathers and made better here in the U.S., you have some real spectacular shows of horror when it comes to freedom of speech getting trampled to death. Last week, at a reform table set up at a local market about 100 miles north of London, an officer approaches an older gentleman who starts getting asked questions. Now, Reform is a political party that is, vying to basically unseat both the Tories, the Conservative Party that lost the last election, and the Labour folks. This is the party that Nigel Farage is the head of, and anyway, this video's gone absolutely viral all across the world. You got to watch it. You got to listen to every second of this.
Apparently, during some conversations between yourself, apparently you have alleged. We weren't here, so I don't know you've said it, but you've alleged to say speak English. Or was that effect?
Speak clearly.
Speak clearly.
No,
okay.
The gentleman's partially deaf.
Yeah, he
can
speak clearly. Yeah.
So I couldn't even hear him.
No, and that's fine, and that's why we've just come to speak, because potentially someone could perceive that as a hate crime.
Did we just know this was going to happen?
No, I know. People, if someone says to me, officer, I believe this, then we need to look at it, because someone's potentially reporting to me.
Okay, I know that was a little bit difficult to hear. The officer comes in and says, some conversations between yourself, apparently you've been alleged. We weren't here, we can't say it. Speak English. The man goes, no, I said speak clearly. The officer goes, okay. And then some lady says, well, the gentleman is partially deaf. We couldn't even hear. Then the officer goes, well, okay. Then that's all okay. But if you had said speak English, that could be a hate crime. Imagine living in a universe where telling someone to learn the language of your country is something that could put you in prison. This is wild. And it is the indisputed wet dream of every single big Democrat in this country to have the same occur here were it not for the pesky Constitution. And I bring up the term pesky Constitution deliberately because those were, I think, some of the nearly exact words that Obama himself at one point in his career, a constitutional law professor, said about our founding document. Saying, oh, I'd love to do all this stuff. I got the pesky Constitution gets in the way. It's how they think. The Brits don't have a pesky First Amendment. So they're able to pass these laws that are enforced by the police who go around monitoring speech, much as we had happened to us when we were on the playground as second graders, arresting adults for saying things that A, are innocuous, really, B, even if they are absolutely offensive, who cares? Words are words, right? We have a media here that lies to us nonstop. They're allowed to do that. And even in spite of lying, their side still loses elections because people see through their lies. And the takeaway from it is what? That bad ideas, wrong ideas, lies, rude things, insulting things lose in the marketplace of ideas, which is why free speech generally is very good. And ought to be, I say generally, because even in this country, we have some very narrow exemptions and restrictions that can be put on speech by the government, but they're very small. And those restrictions have been finely tuned over the many years of us litigating these First Amendment cases. I mean, us as Americans, right? And having them go up to the courts and getting, tooled around a little bit. But things are out of kilter in the world, and it's because they're losing. I want to make this really clear. The reason that this is all going south, and you see all these, restrictions in Great Britain and in Germany and stuff that they tried here in this country in the last 4 years, all the Facebook stuff, Twittergate. This is what tyrants do when they feel that they are losing grip over their peasants, right? Their subjects. And so what they start to, the first thing, right, a dictator begins to do, and a despot starts to restrict even further personal liberties of people, all in the name of what? Public safety, public decency, right? All this stuff. And there it is. I'm just telling you, that's my takeaway on this. And I have to share it. Again, I have to share it because this is what is on the flip side of Trump. This is what's on the flip side of MAGA conservatism. We're not going to get some kind of fantasy candidate, Bill Clinton, who's mostly conservative and wants to do welfare reform and is gonna, he's going to sell everything to China. But Bill Clinton, you're not going to get a Bill Clinton Democrat, folks. That ship has sailed. Listen to the Democrats. Listen to Taylor Lawrence talk about what the Democrats want to do. In fact, I got that clip too today. It's a whole nother story. Taylor Lawrence, right, the journalist, so-called, got interviewed on CNN, and she actually said, well, I kind of get why, Luigi Mangione, the CEO, alleged CEO killer, why he has sex appeal and why he's got a following within the Democratic Party. Listen.
Hilarious to see these millionaire media pundits on TV clutching their pearls about someone standing a murderer when this is the United States of America, as if we don't lionize criminals, as if we don't have, we don't stand murderers of all sorts, and we give them Netflix shows. There's a huge disconnect between the narratives and the angles that sort of mainstream media pushes and what the American public feels. And you see that in moments like this. And I can tell you, I saw the biggest audience growth that I've ever seen, because people were like, oh, some journalist is actually speaking to the anger that we feel.
The women who got her outside court in New York.
So you're going to see women especially that feel like, oh my God, right? Like, here's this man who's revolutionary, who's famous, who's handsome, who's young, who's smart. He's a person that seems this morally good man, which is hard to find.
I want to be ill. Now, I can't tell you here definitively that Luigi Mangione is guilty, right? I don't know that. We don't know that. To say that is not responsible. But I watched someone on a CCTV camera walk up behind a father, a husband, a CEO. I don't care what he did. Okay, literally get shot in the back, execution style, on the streets of a great American city. And you have people on the left going, oh my gosh, like, I can totally understand it. I mean, he's handsome and he's powerful and he's young and he's brave and gosh, he's so smart. The Democratic Party of Bill Clinton is dead. So again, the other side of having Trump, and I know some of you are not maybe the biggest fans of Trump. And you might listen to me sometimes go, Sam, stop fanboying. I'm just saying, what are our options right now? Because as best as I can tell, when I look at a guy like Bill Maher who stands up and is willing to tell the truth based on his observation of Trump, he gets everyone piling on him for being a toady, okay? So the Democratic Party is not looking to have a discourse, have a conversation with anybody. Even the people out there who are quote unquote moderate Democrats are terrified of their base. So that's, I'll just tell you, I am so absolutely worried for this country. If it weren't for Donald Trump, I don't know where we'd be. Because the two things that Trump has done for us is, one, save our country, number one. Number two, he has surrounded himself with the next generation of leadership that can see to it that America remains saved and prospers for the next century and beyond. Gosh, we don't deserve him. I'm going back to the start of this hour. We don't deserve the guy. And the left, I mean, you know how many people think like Taylor? Oh my God, Luigi Mangione. Oh. Can you imagine us idolizing somebody that went and shot George Soros in broad daylight? I don't like Soros. I think he's a disgusting human being. But in no world would I support his extrajudicial execution, on a street corner somewhere, just to be absolutely clear. And I know you agree with me on that. All right, quick pause here. I know we got tariff stuff to talk about. I want to talk to you about something you're going to hear on the news probably in a week, maybe 4 days. This is why you listen to this program. I get you not just caught up, I get you ahead of some of the news. Sam@what'srightshow.com is my email. @what'srightsam on Twitter or X. I'll be back in a moment. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. So happy to have you here this beautiful Monday. A beautiful day outside in downtown Las Vegas. Perfect temperatures. We flirted with the 90s this weekend. I love it. So very happy about that. The trade war with China. It is on like Donkey Kong. Now, why is this? What's the update on this? Well, tariffs, I think the rates are where they are. Trump over the weekend, late Friday, created a carve out for example, for iPhones, for cell phones and some computer technology. Look, I think the real story is this. China got pissed off and lifted a law over the weekend that prevented formally, right now they did away with it, prevented the factories that make luxury goods in China from talking about the fact that they actually are the ones that make these products. Now, before I play this video, look, I'm just gonna, I feel like I need to give a short class, if I may, on what an Hermes bag is, what an Hermes purse is. All right. Some of you are going, oh, Sam, I know. But just as Rush would say, for those of you out there in Rio Linda, let me just explain this. Okay. There is a luxury store. There's a lot of luxury boutiques. By the way, the Chinese factories make, here's a spoiler, right? They make these bags apparently for all of these luxury stores. But I'm picking on Hermes because I think a purse there starts like an Hermes Birkin bag, which is very sought after, starts at $7,000, something like that, Robbie. You can easily go into 10 or 15, and if there's alligator skin, or some kind of exotic material, right? If it's lined in the inside with Joe Biden's plugs, right? That kind of then all of a sudden it could be, some of these purses can be $100,000. No joke. So why am I saying this? So the whole idea is you're buying this very limited item, and you're buying it and and it says made in France. And guess what? It turns out now that these boutiques these factories are able to talk about it, and they're doing it deliberately to punish the West. So here is a video of a Chinese guy holding up, and those of you watching this on Spotify, you can see the video, but he's holding all of these very well-known luxury brands, including Hermes purses that retail for, let's say, $7,000-8,000, or about $12,000 on average when you add it all together, 15 maybe. $15,000 for a purse, can you imagine? Okay. And all this stuff apparently is being made in China. I'm going to play, it's got a little funky little music bed. It's a TikTok video, okay? But what he's showing off here looks very real to me.
Some say as long as there's a tag saying made in China, the bag can never be luxury. However, in fact, more than 80% of the luxury bags in the world are made in China. But those luxury brands just won't acknowledge that. They take almost finished bags from China factories back to their own factories and just do the repackaging and logo installing, something like that. That way, the bags will appear at their boutiques as made in Italy or made in France. You know, those sophisticated European countries, which make you feel mysterious, royal, and thus luxury. Now, close your eyes. Let's just do a little, very easy experiment in your head, okay? Imagine that you have an Hermes bag, and suddenly the label on it changed from made in France into made in China, while everything else, like leathers, zippers, and hardware, remain the same. Do you suddenly feel that your bag is not as luxury as before? If you do, that means you have been misled and poisoned by the market campaign of those luxury brands for too long. Welcome to the real world. Now you see, those bags are made in China by our intelligent and diligent Chinese artisans. Let's not be poisoned and misled by the market campaign any longer, and be a real person. Buy a bag from us, from our factory in China. See the real world for yourself.
Because they make them there. They make them there. All of it. You know, and that's why when we ask, well, how can big business, you know, be anti-Trump and Trump is good for business? You know, these companies have been scamming everybody. And it is all about the money. And I remember there was a clip last week of a quote. I think it wasn't even a clip, but it was the CEO of Apple. And he said, look, we don't produce stuff in China because of low cost. We produce because of high quality. And I remember going, please, hold on. It's all about the money. We all understand that. So they're producing this purse for a few $100s and selling it, maybe, and selling it for $15,000. And that's why these companies have multi-billion-dollar, capital, this is unbelievable. I think this is going to be, Robbie, I think this is going to be the number one story when we start to discover everything that we think is made in the West is actually made in China. And I'll remind you of something very important. Remember when COVID broke out? Wuhan, all the factories are in that area. And who was the first to get COVID in Western Europe? It went straight to Milan, the basically the epicenter of fashion in Europe, because that's where they do all the business back and forth. It's all, trust me, folks, this is one of the worst kept secrets out there. It's all coming out now. Buckle up. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. I'll see you tomorrow, folks. Be safe out there.